Hi guys, welcome to Unit 5, which is our cell biology unit. This lecture is a bit long, so be prepared to take stops, walk away and come back, and take it in chunks. We're going to do it in about 2 weeks in class, so there's no stress to try to get all of it done at once. We're going to talk about what is life, cell theory, cell categories, eukaryotic cells, cell organization, tissues, and organ systems. So life is currently defined as having 8 properties. I do want to make a note here. These properties can change as the scientific community learns more. They can be combined or new ones added or ones taken away. So this is just as of what's accepted right now. The 8 are order, sensitivity, reproduction, adaptation, growth and development, regulation and homeostasis, energy processing, and evolution. So order refers to the structure of an organism from the cellular level to more complex levels like organs and muscles. You can see starting on the left here and going down across, it gives you from an atom all the way to the biosphere level. We're primarily going to talk about these levels here, which is the organization and organisms, starting at organelles, cells, tissues, organs, organ system, and organism. Notice that life starts here at the cell. Sensitivity or response to stimuli means that your organism can react to things like temperature, touch, light. This plant here closes up when things touch it. Venus flytraps do the same thing. Not every sensitivity or response has to be big and noticeable as long as it's there. Reproduction, in the most simple terms, this is the ability to create progeny, either through asexual reproduction or sexual reproduction. You have to be able to continue your species in order to be considered alive. All right, next is adaptation. This is an organism's ability to fit their environment or make changes as needed to create a better fit. Now, not every organism always makes changes fast enough. Some organisms still go extinct and things like that. But typically, organisms do have the ability to change over time so that they are better suited for their environments. And these can be things like birds developing different beak sizes for what food is available, or bacteria learning to survive in extreme temperatures or other places. Growth and development refers to change throughout an organism's life. Sometimes it's very small changes from the initial cell to the end of life. Sometimes it can be very drastic. Regulation and homeostasis. So these two are really closely related, and they actually used to be separate, but they've been lumped together now. And it just deals with how the body reacts to external inputs like food, temperature, and other things like that to maintain internal balance. Homeostasis itself is just the balancing act of your cells to maintain a stable internal environment. So this means the right temperature, pH, presence of chemicals in the correct concentration. Think of like thermoregulation. Regulation is a broader term, and homeostasis is kind of tucked in underneath there. And this regulation is use of chemical, hormonal, and mechanical processes to coordinate internal functions, especially those in response to external stimuli. So homeostasis is a very narrow view of it when we're talking about just maintaining our cells in their perfect environment that they need, because they do have this Goldilocks zone of temperature and things. And then the regulation as a whole is just taking all of that internal and external and balancing your body out itself. Energy processing is the body's ability to use a source of energy. Could be food. This is photosynthesis to create sugars and then use the sugars. So if you can't eat, you're not alive. Now, there's some variation here about how they eat and what they eat, but you still have to use energy to be alive. Last but not least, evolution. This is actually very closely tied to adaptation. Organisms change over time. There are very few organisms that haven't changed or that have only shifted a little. So to be alive, we consider that all organisms must have gone through evolution and be part of our evolutionary tree. All right, so if you haven't already, pause, take a break, walk away, and then when you're ready to resume, come back and we're going to start unified cell theory and cell types. All right, welcome back. Unified cell theory is really important because this provides a foundation for a lot of our knowledge about cells, despite the fact that it seems very, very simple. So it was proposed by Schleiden and Swan, who were a botanist and zoologist respectively, and it says that all things are composed of one or more cells. The cell is the basic unit of life, and new cells must arise from existing cells. This is important because prior to it being stated, we didn't necessarily know for sure, and we didn't all come to that agreement of, yes, we all agree that this is true. And in science, to build off of ideas, everyone has to come to at least kind of agreements on them if they're foundational to your topic. So this is what is currently accepted about all living things and about cells itself. I will expect you to know these. Please put a star next to them or highlight them, whatever you want to do to remind yourself that this is important. All right, so categories of cells. There are two types of cells. We have prokaryotes. These are older cells. These are ones that don't have a nucleus. They're pro for before, karyon for nucleus. They're all single-celled or unicellular. They lack a nucleus or any membrane-bound organelle. This is typically domain bacteria and domain archaea. Eukaryotes, on the other hand, have membrane-bound organelles and membrane-bound compartments, membrane-bound nuclei, U for true, karyon for nucleus. Again, with science, a lot of the names will tell you exactly what they are if you can remember the roots. Example of these are animal cells, plant cells, fungi, and protists. So this is a typical prokaryotic cell. We can see that it has the cell wall and the capsule to protect it, but inside there's not a whole lot going on. We've got that plasma membrane. The cytoplasm is the jelly where everything's floating around. We've got our DNA, which is that spaghetti-looking stuff you saw, and then the ribosomes to help make proteins, because they do still need proteins. It does not have the nucleus, it does not have organelles. These are eukaryotic cells. The left is the plant and the right is an animal. You'll notice they are much more complex compared to that prokaryotic cell. They have a lot of organelles and structures in them that help them to function. The cell's organelles, but it's really organelles and structures. So these are the 9 primary components of animal cells that we're going to talk about. There's the plasma membrane, cytoplasm, nucleus, the ER rough and smooth, the Golgi apparatus, lysosomes, vacuoles, mitochondria, and ribosomes. All right, so the plasma membrane is our first part. This is a phospholipid bilayer that separates the inside of the cell from its environment. Think of it as a soft bubble around it that holds everything in. The cytoplasm is the jelly-like substance that keeps everything floating. If your cell didn't have cytoplasm and wasn't inflated, then it would just kind of collapse. So it helps provide structure, especially for animal cells. Our nucleus stores our DNA. It also directs synthesis of ribosome and proteins. What you'll have too on the outside of the nucleus is the nuclear envelope, which is an extra membrane that protects your DNA a little bit more. Your ER is your endoplasmic reticulum, and this is interconnected tubules that modify proteins and synthesize lipids. This bumpy part here is the rough ER that is responsible for synthesizing those proteins with the ribosomes. Those are the bumps that are attached. It also helps fold or add sugars to molecules and make phospholipids for cell membranes. The smooth ER, on the other hand, doesn't have those ribosomes attached, and it handles carbohydrates, lipids, and steroid hormones. It can actually also help your immune system detox meds and poisons, helps with alcohol metabolism, and it helps store calcium ions. Your Golgi look like pancake stacks if you look at a picture of a cell, and these are flattened membranous stacks that sort, tag, package, and distribute lipids and proteins. It's the USPS of your cells. Lysosomes are your cell's garbage disposal. These are little bubbles floating around that have digestive enzymes inside to help break down proteins, polysaccharides, lipids, worn out organelles, or anything else that your cell needs to get rid of. In a single celled organism, it's actually the digestive system. In a multi-celled organism, it helps with just maintaining cells, and then if you get sick, it can also help your immune system. Vacuoles and vesicles are membrane-bound sacs that can look a lot like lysosomes if you're not careful. Um, Vacuoles are larger and what we're going to talk the most about, and these carry different things around the cell. Vacuoles cannot fuse with membranes, while vesicles can. You don't have to know that for the test. It's just a fun little fact about how to actually tell them apart. Next is mitochondria. These are the powerhouse or the energy factory of the cell. They make ATP by breaking down glucose. We've talked about cellular respiration before. Here's where it's done. Fun fact, mitochondria have their own DNA and ribosomes because they used to be an actual organism. Ribosomes are responsible for protein synthesis. We are going to talk more about these during our transcription and translation week, but they'll just also look as free-floating dots unless they're attached to the rough ER. All right, so that was animal. Now we're moving on to plant. These are the organelles of a plant cell. If you look at this list, you'll see that it's everything animals have minus lysosomes, but plus a cell wall, chloroplast, and a central vacuole. Cell walls are made of cellulose. They're very, very rigid. They provide protection, structural support, and give the cell shape. So think of castle walls. Chloroplasts allow photosynthesis to occur in plants, uses carbon dioxide, water, light to make glucose and oxygen. They're green because of the chlorophyll inside of them. And fun fact, these also used to be their own organisms, so they have their own DNA and their own ribosomes. Last but not least is our central vacuole. These provide structure and store water. So plants store it in a big single vacuole instead of lots of little ones. It again helps with the structure and support for their cell walls. All right, here's another good spot to stop, take a break, go stretch, and come back to it. When you're ready, go ahead and hit play again. All right, so next we're going to be talking about the organization of cells in organisms. So within an organism, cells typically have the following levels of structure. We have a cell, which is our smallest unit of life and our building block. Tissues are cells that are similar, working together. Organs are tissues that are working together. Organ systems are organs working together. All of these are nested into the previous layer, just working together for a single purpose. And then obviously you have an organism. Now, organisms can be as complex or simple as they need to be. You can have single-celled organisms. You can have multicellular that only have tissues or that have organs but don't put them together into organ systems. That's completely possible. Cells will differentiate, and this is how we get those different tissue types and the different cell types. They'll start with a stem cell and then they'll change into bone or muscle or nerve. They'll keep a few unspecialized cells, especially early in development, just in case your body needs them. And then as you get older, those get used up and you have less. This is an example of immune system cells. You can see we've got lymphoids and mastoids, and they become platelets or basophils, neutrophils, T lymphocytes. So this is just a very small fraction of what your cells can turn into. All right, so there are four main types of tissue that we're going to be talking about. There's muscle tissue, which has three subtypes of smooth, skeletal, and cardiac. Smooth is tissue that is in your organs. So think like your intestines, how they have to squeeze and move to get food out. Skeletal are muscles that deal with movement. And then cardiac is your heart exclusively. They contract and release in order to produce movement. Epithelial tissue is lining tissue that covers internal surfaces. So epithelial, think of like the inside of your stomach or the inside of your intestines, things like that. Those are epithelial. They have very, very specialized roles. You would technically have epidermal tissues, which are on the outside of your skin and form the protective layers. Nervous tissue is your receive and respond to stimuli. So this is your nervous system. There's a couple different types of nerve cells. We're not going to go into super detail for this class. Just know that they exist. This helps regulate other systems. And then connective tissue supports, protects, and binds other tissues, includes cells and extracellular matrices, and can be rigid or fluid. All right, almost to the last section. This is another good stopping point if you need to walk away, take a break, and come back. We are going to hit these rapid fire. You just have to have the very base idea of what they do and what they are. So go ahead and hit pause and come back. All right, welcome back. We're going to make the last bit. So, organ systems and their functions. The first system, circulatory. This delivers oxygen, nutrients, and everything else throughout the body and helps pull things out away as well. Helps maintain homeostasis by balancing temperature, pH, and O2 levels. Digestive breaks down food into usable nutrients and eliminates solid waste. Not to be confused with liquid waste because that's a different one. Endocrine is your hormones, so it's stimuli input, adrenaline, insulin. This is a slower response system than your nervous system, but the two work together to respond to external stimuli. Excretory removes metabolic waste and maintains osmotic balance or fluid levels. So this used to be the urinary system. It's now been combined because it also handles exhaling and things like that. So this is that liquid waste and metabolic waste. Immune or lymphatic protects the body from pathogens like bacteria, viruses, fungi, parasites, etc. Integumentary maintains homeostasis, protects the body, creates vitamin D, intakes sensory information, heat and temperature management, and keeps hair and skin waterproof through oil. So integumentary, that's your skin. It's one of the biggest organs and pretty much the only one in that system. All right, guys, halfway there. 7, muscular. Your muscular system is responsible for the movement of the body and your posture. And number 8 is nervous. This is the sensory input and interpretation of that input. It also sends signals for voluntary function, including movement. It's in charge of involuntary mechanisms, so like when you yank your hand away from a hot stove, breathing, things like that, and it handles your thinking, reasoning, and logic. And then last but not least, reproductive system, obviously reproduction, making of offspring. Respiratory, intaking O2, fixing it for the body so it can use it, and expelling CO2. And then skeletal. Your skeletal system helps support your body, allows for movement along with the muscular system, provides protection for organs and internal systems, stores nutrients and memory cells for your immune system inside the bone marrow, and also produces blood cells. All right, good job, guys. I know that was a long one, so feel free to go back to parts if you need to and take it in pieces. And then we'll see you in the next lecture.